imagine being a developer and that you left running an agentic system that creates software like Cloud Code for the weekend, and that the bill is $4,200. Or the things that we are seeing continuously in the public forums where tech leads are admitting that the software and products that they're creating with Cloud Code, no one knows how they work or how to maintain it. Meanwhile, business leaders are terrified that new companies, new startups using agentic workflows and smaller teams come to disrupt their whole business. And for that, we have here Eyherabide, Chief AI Officer at Wizeline, and Santiago Merchan, Senior AI at Wizeline, to discuss these topics and how can we adapt and learn to thrive in this new era. So, Andy and Santiago, welcome.
Thank you, Alvaro.
Thank you. Good morning.
And I want to start with a topic that I find very interesting, and is the paralyzed majority. As I mentioned, Andy, many of the business leaders are now terrified about what they're hearing, that a new startup can come, start an agentic system with their smaller team and disrupt their business and destroy their whole business strategy for 3 years. So what do you recommend for these big companies in finance, retail, media, healthcare? How can they adapt their strategy to be competitive with these new startups that are surging? And what are you seeing that are the top practices?
Okay, great question. And by the way, about burning tokens, I was this close to doing it myself. Yeah, that's a story for a later time. Listen, I think that we should not confuse strategy with execution. Okay, so I think that with the tools and the models that we have available right now, we can hand over the execution layer to artificial intelligence. Now, your strategy should be about something else. Sequoia recently, well, not so recently anymore, they released a paper and they drew a line between intelligence and judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And still today, judgment remains human. So if I think about strategy, thinking about what to build, when to build it, when to deploy it, what features to invest in, that is judgment, and that remains human, and it involves
Interesting. Yeah.
it involves
Yeah. What I heard
experience.
from, for example, the head of product in Cloud Code that said that that product taste is now one of the most important
Exactly.
skills.
Taste.
Yeah.
Yes, experience and taste. That remains human. What AI gives startups is the ability to actually execute on an idea really, really fast, right? But strategy is not about execution. So as long as
Definitely.
you know
And
what business you're
two of
in
the
and what
things
makes
during
you
my
you and where do you
research
win.
about this topic that I see exactly where do you win is about data and governance. For example, in data, there are some people that say that that big companies that have been here for a long time, the way to be competitive is to use their current on all the historical information and their client information, and that's what makes them different, and that's where they should focus instead of, and that's why they can beat the new companies that just rely, let's say, on real-time streaming and new information. What do you think about this, Andy?
I think that data is important. Your company, your identity, your products, your customers. I think that's very important, especially when everybody's using the same model. So the data is what actually makes these models your own, right? And what helps you continue to sound like you. But data alone is not enough. I think that's an important distinction. Data alone is not enough, and there's a number of examples out there of companies who, sitting on a lot of proprietary data, thought that that alone would give them the advantage and would allow them to come up with new revenue streams. And the reality is that data alone was not enough.
Interesting. Interesting, definitely. And
It's needed, it's necessary, but it's not enough.
it's not enough. And yeah, I also read that it was really important to now have a really solid data foundation so that you can have really fast feedback loops and learn a lot. Okay, you can have your proprietary historical data and all of that, but you also need to have right now good data systems to learn fast and really take advantage of this new intelligence from large language models, right?
That's correct. And data is also needed to ground the agents, right? If we're talking about, agentic AI and agentic coding specifically, data in context is very much needed and necessary to ground the response of such agents.
Agreed. And what about this other point that I found, Andy, and was that, and it's the proposal from Pierre Diamandis and I don't remember his name right now, but he's really famous from the podcast of the Moonshots. And they are working in that company or that organization of exponential companies. And they talk about that the strategy that big companies should take is trying to create a twin company. Because if they try to redesign or integrate agentic workflows directly in the original company, it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of resistance. But if you start creating an alternative company with part of your staff trying to redesign from scratch all of those processes and then reintegrate it, that's the way to go. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a line of thought that is taking traction in the market. I've yet to see it. The reality is that I've yet to see it like actually work. But yes, it is a recommendation that specifically some management consulting firms or giving companies advising their clients, that it almost feels like they need to split the company in two,
Yeah.
because otherwise it takes them a lot of time to achieve escape velocity, because they're just dealing with a lot of heritage, right? With a lot of
And
legacy,
resistance, right?
not even technical debt, with a lot of legacy, right? So,
Legacy.
and you know, earlier this morning, I was speaking with a colleague. Many are saying that tech modernization and repaying technical debt is the next frontier for agentic coding. But then the counter argument to that is, well, but wait, maybe it's even better with the tools that we have today to build from scratch as opposed to modernize what we have. So I think that it's a similar line of thought, right? Like splitting the company in two. So instead of, sprinkling AI to your company and expecting magical things to happen, like setting up new areas with new workflows, AI native workflows and processes all together.
Right. Yeah. And they talk about the Nespresso case. I don't know if you know about this, but Nestle had a lot of problems trying to innovate internally with Nespresso. And it took decades before the CEO took the decision of creating, instead of trying to innovate from within with Nespresso, create a new company. That was the Nespresso company. And that was a huge success. So yeah, maybe that's
We had a
the
similar, I can recall a
right.
similar situation when working with DirecTV. DirecTV, they had a satellite-based cable company, and all of a sudden streaming came upon. So the executives back then, they decided to create a different division altogether, because their claim was that, and I'm talking like this was long before the age of AI, I'm talking 2018, 2017. What they were saying is that the company had antibodies that would resist the change, the shift towards streaming and leaving the legacy business behind. So essentially what they did, they didn't split the company in two, but they created like an R&D branch that focused on streaming And that led to DirecTV Now in the United States and DirecTV Go in Latin America.
Yeah, definitely. And one point that I want to mention and that I want Santiago's input on that is the other point that they talk about in the research that I made, or that some people think, is governance. And by governance, they mean that the competitive advantage that a big company has is that they have the reputation, the trust of the consumer, and that they should focus on creating agentic services or AI services that rely on that trust and that really work really well, and that people can trust that they work well, they respect their privacy, the data, instead of what the new companies are doing, that is just like high speed. They made a lot of mistakes and then just recover and try to give some side of financial incentive to repair that. What do you think, Santiago?
Yeah, that's really important. Nowadays, as you mentioned, in AI and in software development, writing code is the easy part. The hard part is deciding which task the agent could run on its own. So, and which ones need a human in the loop step, as Andy mentioned. So, of course, along with the key architectural decisions such as the composition patterns, tokens, billings, where you decide what tools the agent should use, what permission you give it, what processes should run sequentially, or what should run in parallel to reduce latency, for example. So yeah, definitely today strategy is not about which model you use or which tool. It's about the judgment and the governance that you build around it, and that's much harder to copy.
Yeah.
And what do
And
you think,
Alvaro,
Andy?
yeah, so I just wanted to add, and this is something that you and I have actually discussed previously. Andrew Ng has been saying for over a year now that the bottleneck in software development has shifted from the developer to the product manager. Goes back to intelligence versus judgment. Um, Software development is a workflow. It's a complex workflow, but at the end of the day, you can bring it down to a set of rules, right? And
Right.
specs, which the AI can follow. But judgment, that is work of a product manager, right? Coming up with a product, what features to build, when to release them, where to release them, and so on. So intelligence versus judgment, strategy versus execution.
Definitely. And do you think that trust is a big competitive advantage for companies? They should focus on that, like, because now you're giving a lot of information and even and maybe automate more things in your life or in your company. You think that companies that really are trustworthy or that create the infrastructure to make sure that everything works well and safe, is
Well,
that a major thing, or don't you think that's
it's not ideal, but the code itself can be a black box. But the architecture never can be. So in some teams, we use simple rules like if an engineer cannot explain what an AI written change actually does in 5 minutes, it gets rejected, even if the test passed. So this is definitely important, but nowadays, to tell you the truth, no, that's not the most important thing to understand every line of code.
definitely? And now that you talk about creating code, we were talking before the episode with Andy about topics that were relevant to the industry leaders, and Claude is definitely top of mind. Cloud Code, Cloud Cowork, and all the systems to build agents around it are really important. And Andy, what do you think? What are you seeing that the companies that are creating the most value using these tools are doing, and what they're doing differently to be successful with these tools?
Um, I would say that there's a journey. Okay, so the companies that are trying to go straight to agentic coding, I mean, they're failing and they're failing hard, right? So there's a maturity, there's a progression that starts with um, AI adoption based on tools, There is a learn and development journey that employees of the companies need to go through, right? Because people are not born knowing it all, right? But there's definitely companies that are stuck in experimentation, and I would say that those, for the large part, those are companies that are treating AI like an individual productivity hack. I would say that the companies that are doing it right, that are scaling agentic coding, they're treating it as a discipline. Um, it's a combination of a clear maturity path, like I said, right? That starts with tool based AI adoption. I think that spec driven development as a methodology is
Right.
also key, because you can't have agents like doing stuff here and there, right? It all needs to come together. Because at the end of the day, like I said, it's a workflow. And there's a phrase that I heard recently: an agent will do what you tell it to do, not what you want it to do. And the best way today of telling agents what to do in software development is through spec-driven development. Um, and the third thing that I would say is governing the agents, right? Implementing, establishing an enterprise harness so agents can move fast without blowing up your production environments, and your costs and your budget
Right.
is key. I would say that those are the things that the leaders are doing really well.
That's interesting. And yeah, definitely, as you can see here in the slide in the screen, the share right now of Claude in coding models is 54%. And that's a number from December 2025. So it must be higher right now. And it's growing really fast. And definitely what I have seen and experienced testing Cloud Code and Cowork is that you definitely need to know how to use them. They're very powerful, but if you don't really learn how to use these tools, you're going to waste a lot of time and it's not going to do what you want. And
And
you're
money.
going to waste a lot of tokens, right?
Yeah, and money. I think that so this was it was probably like 18 months ago. It was at a conference and Anthropic was on stage, and back then they said something in the lines of, we believe that having the best models allows us to build the best agents, right? And this was before they launched Claude Code and
All
Cowork.
right.
We need to keep in mind that the frontier continues to shift. So I think that there's consensus that right now, Claude is the golden standard when it comes to using AI to develop software. But we need to understand that that is constantly evolving and changing. So Moonshot AI released Kimi 3.
Yeah.
It's been benchmarking very well. Alibaba with Quen, they're also seeing some very good results. So I do expect that as models continues to evolve, tools will evolve with it as well. And yes, Cloud Code today represents the gold standard. Let's see what happens 6 months from now, 12 months from now, and so on.
Definitely. And Santiago, what do you see? You use Cloud Code a lot. What do you think are like the best practices that you have learned that really makes the difference on saving time and not wasting a lot of time in rework and
Yeah.
doing a lot of things?
Well, there are many. I think the teams that win treat agents like infrastructure, not like a feature. So, but some additional good practices we apply on every project. On every generative AI project is catching repeated context, routing simple tasks to cheaper models, and saving the strongest one for
Yeah,
hard reasoning. Uh, Trimming all context instead of sending the full history every time. And those are some points that Cloud Code really help us to do it easily. But it's important when building these kind of chatbots, agents, or generative AI solutions. And this is important the last time I mentioned because we used to talk about prompt engineering, which is still
mm,
very relevant. But now good context management is the most important thing from my point of view, because although 1 million context window tokens seems like too much, selecting the relevant portion of context of each step through an LLM is the key to developing robust, scalable, and successful solutions.
Definitely. And what Andy said, I think it's key, and it's a spec-driven development. I think that's really important, and that's one thing that for me in the last 2 to 3 months had made a lot of difference in the results that I'm seeing, in the efficiency. Because I can do a lot of things, but it took a lot of time, bad results. But really fine-tuning your spec-driven development, I think that makes a really good, a really big difference. And taking the time to create really good specs and what they say, evals, right? The things that, the edge cases that really tell you how you expect a system to work. I think that's key.
Yeah. And Alvaro, you said, remember the phrase, in the context of trust but verify, right? I think that's super important.
Right.
You said, companies are afraid of, using AI to build software, and then it's a black box. Nobody really understands. Nobody knows what's inside of it. Like I'm not saying that you should read every single line of code that the AI generated, but if you don't know what the AI generated, what the output is, then I think that you have bigger issues besides AI, right? I think that that talks about an organization that is not literate in terms of technology. Like I use Claude Code and I build software on the side, but I actually bother to look at what it is creating, not just from a functional perspective, but also how is it built. And it's AI makes mistakes, right? So you catch things here and there that you think should or could be different. So it really is an iterative process. So going back to your point about trust, to me, it's trust but verify.
I want to reinforce that point is that according to McKinsey, only 23% of companies are actually scaling agentic AI, and the others are just stuck experimenting. And what are some actionable tips that you can give to business leaders to really scale agentic AI in a real way and get value, and not just experiment, and experiment?
So there's some advice that I would give, and this is informed by many of the conversations that I've been having with clients in terms of what the challenges that they're going through. And I'm just going to mention some of some practical advice. Methodology is key, right? Not just thinking about what agents to build or what agents to use, but how are you going to tie these agents together from a methodology perspective? Understanding that software development is a workflow, right? And it needs to come together through all the steps and the phases. Governance as a construct, as a bigger topic. But what I mean by that is, especially in large organizations, we're seeing the same agent being built over and over and over, the same
Right.
skill being built over and over and over, right? So building a harness, building an AI harness, a centralized location where your agents and skills and integrations live, and you build them once and you make sure that they work as you expect them to do. Providing context. Sandy was talking about prompt engineering. I think that prompt engineering has now what is the word that I'm looking for in English? But I feel like in the past we've been speaking a lot about prompt engineering, and now we're talking a lot about context engineering for good reasons, right? But building a harness, a place where your agents and skills and integrations live, and you have like that second brain of your organization, that context that the agents need to build stuff. And then cost control. Cost control is key. That's also a big concern for a lot of the clients that we've been speaking with. Like, how much does this all cost? And I've
Right.
seen things like I've seen teams build agents to write documentation using very advanced models. So
Yeah.
knowing what model to use depending on the task, depending on who is executing the task, protecting the context window, that is all key to managing the cost of AI. And to me, like harness, cost control, observability, explainability, to Santi's point, all that to me is part of governance.
Definitely. Yeah, I really like it. And it definitely is very sound, because one of the barriers that leaders mentioned for not scaling AI, agentic AI, is security and not having the processes or the governance that they need to really scale it. And as you mentioned, it's really hard when or what happens is that everyone has their own cloud code or cloud code, and the thing is that it's getting like everyone's repeating or the skills, they're not sharing really the power, and it's becoming really like a lot of duplication and redundancy.
A lot of waste. Yeah. So to me, the analogy is like 1,000 flowers blooming. And I think that you should promote that to achieve escape velocity, or not even escape velocity, but to foster experimentation and upskilling. So 1,000 flowers blooming, that's fine. But at some point you got to weed the garden. And to me, that's what the harness is. It's weeding the garden, and it's making sure that you're adopting AI in a governed and enterprise fashion, as opposed to just pockets and silos of experiments here and there.
I really like it, and yeah, I think that's really important.
Something really short to add to that point. For me, mature governance means every agent action goes through a clear loop: sense, decide, act, and then checked. And that part, the part almost nobody builds, is that last check. So a
Exactly.
real policy layer that decides in real time what the agent is allowed to touch on its own and what needs a human first interaction. So yeah, mature governance means autonomy has a clear ceiling. It's not about just trusting the model blindly.
Yeah, that's what we refer to as day two. The importance of day two. Agents. I mean, it is software, but it's a different type of software. It's non-deterministic. It's autonomous, so you can't test it in the way that you treat traditional software. So that's why being on top of your agents after you deploy them and checking the output of their work, checking how they're working, and working with other agents, that is key.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm gonna take away the importance of governance in scaling agentic AI. I think that's the key and the thing that's getting a lot of big companies stuck. So, in the end, and Santiago, our time is up, and I want to thank you for your time and your valuable insights in this topic. And if our audience has any more interesting topics that they want to discuss related to AI, and please make sure to put it in the comments, and we'll be happy to comment. So thank you a lot, Santi and Andy.
Thank you, Andy.
Of
Alvaro,
course,
thanks to everyone.
always a pleasure.